Basil is one of the most popular herbs that we use in cooking. It has a delicious flavor that can add so much to a dish. And luckily for us, it's actually a really easy herb to grow at home. In this video, we'll be going over how to plant basil. We'll go over the different ways that you can start your basil, whether you want to start it from seed or if you already have some basil that you want to transplant. We'll also go over how to care for your basil, including how much water you should be watering your basil, and then finally, when and how you should harvest your basil. Let's get started. The first thing that we need to do is actually figure out where we're going to plant our basil. So with basil, you can actually grow it in two different ways. You can either grow it in soil or you can grow it in water. If you grow it in water, it's going to grow faster and it's going to taste better. However, it is a little bit more difficult to grow it in water. So if you're just starting out, I recommend growing it in soil. Eventually, once you get a little bit more experience, you can try growing it in water. To start your basil, you can either start it from seed or you can start it from a small plant that you buy from the store. That's what I recommend doing. If you want to start it from seed, there are two different ways you can start it from seed. You can either start it in a propagation mix, which is what I'm going to show you today, or you could start it in water. Starting it in a propagation mix is going to be a little bit more difficult than just starting it in water. So like I said, I recommend if you're just starting out, start it from a small plant that you buy at the store, and then eventually you can try starting it from seed. Once you have your pot, the next thing that we need to do is add our propagation mix. For this video, I'm using vermiculite. You can also use perlite, cocoa coir, or even soil. The only thing that I wouldn't recommend using is peat because peat can sometimes float. So what I recommend doing is getting a pot that's about twice as big as your plant. This gives your plant room to grow while also being easy to water. Then put about ½ inch of vermiculite into your pot. You don't need a lot of vermiculite because all we're doing is just holding the plant upright while it grows. Next, take your basil and remove the plastic container that it came in. Once you have your plant out of its container, loosen the roots a little bit. This allows the roots to spread out and grow easier. Then put your plant into the pot with the vermiculite. Then place your pot in an area that will receive bright indirect light. So now that we have our basil planted, let's talk about how to care for it. How much water do you need to water your basil? And how often should you be harvesting your basil? Well, it depends on where you live. If you live in a hot climate like I do here in Arizona, your basil is going to dry out a lot faster than if you live in a colder climate. What you need to do is check the vermiculite or whatever medium that you're reusing to make sure that it is not completely dry. If it's not completely dry, you don't need to water it. Yet, if it is completely dry, you need to water it. You want to water it just enough to make sure that the vermiculite is moist but not soggy. Soggy soil can lead to root rot and kill your plant. After you water it, feel the soil to make sure that it's moist but not soggy. How often you'll need to water it depends on where you live. Like I said, if you live in a hot climate like I do here in Arizona, you might need to water it every day or every other day, whereas if you live in a colder climate, you might only need to water it once or twice a week. So now that we know how to plant and care for our basil, let's talk about when and how to harvest it. You can harvest your basil any time after the first true leaves appear. For those of you who don't know, the first true leaves are the leaves that look like the leaves that will eventually grow into. They usually appear after the first round of what's called the seed leaves, which are the small leaves that come out after germination. You can harvest your basil by simply pinching off a leaf or two. This is actually going to encourage more branching and bushier growth. So it's actually better for the plant if you pinch off the leaves instead of cutting them. When you pinch the leaves, try to pinch off the older leaves. These are going to be the leaves that are closer to the bottom of the plant. This again encourages more branching and bushier growth. Also, when you harvest your basil, try to only take about 1/3 of the plant. Do untake too much because you still need to have enough leaves on the plant to photosynthesize and produce food for the rest of the plant. If you live in a warm climate, you'll be able to harvest your basil year-round. However, if you live in a cold climate, you'll only be able to harvest your basil during the spring and summer months. Now, let's talk about what to do with your basil once you harvest it. One of the best things that you can do with your basil is to make pesto. Pesto is a sauce that's made with basil, garlic, pine nuts, Parmesan cheese, and olive oil. It's delicious and it's a great way to preserve your basil. To make pesto, simply combine all of these ingredients in a food processor or blender and blend until smooth. Then you can use it however you want. You can use it as a pasta sauce, or you can use it as a pizza sauce, or you can even use it as a dip. Another thing that you can do with your basil is to freeze it. This is a great way to preserve your basil for the winter months. Just wash your basil thoroughly and then dry it off. Then you can freeze it whole or you can chop it up and freeze it in ice cube trays. I recommend chopping it up and freezing it in ice cube trays because it's easier to use and it lasts longer. If you live in a warm climate and you have too much basil, another thing that you can do with your basil is to give it to your friends and neighbors. They're sure to appreciate it. And that's it. Those are my tips for planting, caring for, and harvesting basil. Basil is a delicious herb that can add so much flavor to your dishes. And luckily for us, it's actually a really easy herb to grow at home. With a little bit of care, you'll be harvesting fresh basil in no time. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you learned something new. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you have any questions, leave them down below. I'm happy to help you out. Thanks for watching.